In the shadow of an empty street, a single note waits, unsigned, yet familiar. Its words crawl under your skin, whispering truths you never wanted to hear. You think you're alone, but the eyes that watch are never far, and the silence is not yours. This is the watcher's note, alone no more. Tonight, your solitude becomes a story, and the story watches you back. The rain taps softly against your window, each drop a tiny echo in the quiet house. Floorboards sigh under invisible weight, settling as though someone, or something, has passed through moments before you arrived. A whisper drifts along the hallway, faint and urgent, brushing your ears like the breath of someone standing just out of sight. You sit in the dim glow of a single lamp, aware that the rooms are larger than they should be, stretching into shadows that flicker with every sway of candlelight. Loneliness presses in, but it is not empty. Somewhere, beyond the curtain of rain, someone has already left a mark, a message meant only for you, and the note waits, patiently, as though it knows you finally noticed. The first night in the house arrives slowly, like a breath held too long. Rain begins to fall outside, drumming against the roof and rattling the thin panes of the old windows. Each drop echoes in the hollow spaces between walls, bouncing across the wooden floorboards with a faint, hollow tap, as though the house itself is breathing and noticing. You stand at the threshold, key still in hand, and the air smells damp, a mix of rain-soaked soil and the faint, lingering scent of wood polished long ago but now tired and faintly acrid. The hallway stretches before you, a narrow corridor lined with shadows that seem thicker than they ought to be, pooling in corners where the light fails to reach. Every movement you make is echoed softly, a creak here, a subtle groan there, each sound magnified in the stillness, and each seems to answer the rhythm of your own heartbeat, slow and tentative, reluctant to disturb the quiet that feels older than the house itself. You place your suitcase on the floor, the wheels clicking against the uneven boards, and pause. There is a shift somewhere behind the walls, almost imperceptible, a subtle thrum like the hush of breathing through a distant vent. It could be the wind pressing against the siding, or it could be something else, something more deliberate, more patient, and entirely unseen. The air seems to thicken in your chest, heavy with expectation, and for a moment, the rain is only a faint, distant patter, drowned out by the subtle pressure of silence, by the feeling that the house has taken note of your presence and has been waiting for you all along. As you move through the rooms, the house reacts, not with aggression, but with a quiet awareness. Floorboards sigh underfoot, releasing a sound that is almost a whisper, a warning, a greeting. The shadows twist slightly with each step, dark corners deepening as though drawing the darkness closer around themselves. Light spills from the hallway into the living room, illuminating the furniture in muted pools, dust motes suspended like tiny spirits dancing lazily in the air. There is a piano in the corner, old and lacquered, its keys slightly yellowed with age. The lid is closed, but for a heartbeat, you feel certain that a single note hovers, waiting for a finger that will never press it, the faint echo of music that belonged to someone long gone. The bedroom, the one you chose for yourself, is cold, the temperature slipping lower than the rest of the house. The window rattles in its frame, shaking in rhythm with the wind, and the rain streaks across the glass in irregular patterns, forming shapes that the mind almost recognizes, a face, a hand, a movement, but they vanish as quickly as they appear. You set down your belongings, each thump against the floorboard resonating in the vast, hollow silence, and the shadows in the corner seem to react, spreading outward slightly as though curious about your presence, testing the limits of the light. In the farthest corner, where the lamp barely reaches, something shifts. You can't quite see it, can't identify its form, yet there is an undeniable sense that it moved with intention, that it waited for you to notice. Sitting on the edge of the bed, you hear it then, a whisper, faint and curling around the room, impossible to place. It is not a word but a sound, a breath carried from some distance down the hallway or perhaps from within the walls themselves. You strain to listen, imagining its source, and the longer you focus, the more the silence seems alive. The floorboards creak again, not from your movement but from a step you do not take. Somewhere in the house, a door shifts slightly in its frame, a slow, deliberate groan that resonates through the air like a low, sympathetic vibration. Your skin prickles. It is not fear in its raw form, not yet, it is something subtler, the feeling that this house remembers every sorrow, every footstep, every sound of life that has passed through it, and now it registers you as another thread woven into its memory. The rain continues outside, relentless and steady, and each drop hitting the roof becomes a drumbeat in the distance, counting out seconds that feel stretched, elastic. You move closer to the window, pressing a hand against the cold glass, and the world outside is a blur of silver streaks, trees bending in the wind, leaves fluttering like whispers themselves. But it is inside that the quiet is more pronounced, more purposeful. The house is breathing with you, around you, the faintest vibrations traveling along the floorboards and the walls, up through the bedposts and into the mattress. Every surface seems to hum with life of a kind you cannot see, cannot name, and every shadow seems to deepen in response to your awareness of it. Your eyes fall upon the hallway once more, the path you walked just minutes ago, and it is different somehow. Not structurally, but in the feel of it, slightly narrower, the darkness slightly heavier. There is a pressure here, subtle yet undeniable, as if the space itself is watching, calculating, and remembering each movement you make. A chill brushes the back of your neck, not cold from the rain or the draft from the window, but something else, a lingering presence that wants to remind you that you are not alone. The air carries a faint, indistinct scent, something smoky, like embers long extinguished, and it coils around the corners of the room in tendrils that are almost tangible. You lay down, pulling the blankets up to your chin, and the house seems to settle, or perhaps it is you who has settled into its rhythm. The rain continues to drum insistently against the roof, and the whispering begins again, faint and fleeting, like breaths against the nape of your neck. The floorboards creak once more, and for a moment, it feels as though someone has passed the threshold into the room, yet no one is there. The shadows pulse subtly in the corners, moving with a life independent of light, and you find your own breath shallow, careful, synchronized with the hushed movements of the house itself. The room stretches outward, larger than its walls, as though opening itself to you, but not in welcome, rather in curiosity, a slow, deliberate attention that lingers, patient and unblinking. Hours pass, though time is uncertain here. The rain ebbs and swells in waves, the wind rattles the frames, and each creak, each sigh of the old house is amplified against the stillness. The whispers grow slightly, brushing closer to understanding, brushing against your consciousness in ways that are almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. You do not fall asleep immediately. Instead, you lie in the half-light, aware of every tiny sound, every movement in the shadows, every subtle shift in the air. The house listens, and the house remembers. And though you are alone, you feel it, a presence hovering at the edge of perception, patient, silent, knowing you have arrived, and that the night has only just begun. The first note appears not with a bang or a scream, but quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a shadow brushing against the edge of your vision. The rain outside has grown heavier, drumming relentlessly against the window panes, each drop a tiny hammer against glass, filling the house with a rhythm both comforting and strange. The floorboards sigh under their own age, creaking softly as though they shift in anticipation, and the dim glow of the lamp in the corner casts more shadow than light, turning corners into deep hollows where darkness lingers with intention. You enter the kitchen, drawn by a faint unease, and notice a single sheet of paper lying atop the counter, its edges curling slightly from the moisture in the air. There is no envelope, no handwriting you recognize, only the words inscribed in a careful, deliberate script that seems to ripple slightly in the flickering light, almost as though it were alive. The paper is cold under your fingers, and the ink glimmers faintly as though damp, yet the words remain clear, short, intimate, unsettling. It speaks of your arrival here, of your routines, of things only someone very close, or very attentive, would notice. Your pulse quickens, but not in panic. It is a slow, deliberate awareness, a tightening of the chest as though the house itself has pressed its presence closer, wanting to be noticed, wanting to remind you that solitude is no longer yours. The shadows in the corners of the room seem to pulse in response, swelling and retreating with each hesitant breath you take, and for a moment, the rain and the darkness blend into a single, suffocating wave that carries both menace and melancholy. You set the note down, trying to rationalize it, to convince yourself it must be a trick of your own hand, something left in a distracted moment before the house grew fully quiet. But the house does not yield to rationality. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of the wood, seems attuned to your thoughts, echoing the tension coiled in your chest. The lamp flickers ever so slightly, casting brief, uncertain shadows across the countertop, and for a heartbeat, it is impossible to tell if the shadows are merely the result of light or if they are moving with an intent all their own. A whisper brushes the edges of your awareness, soft and curling, carrying no words, only a presence that lingers just beyond hearing, pressing against the back of your mind with a gentle insistence. You return to the note, compelled despite yourself. The words feel impossibly personal now, not merely a statement but an observation, a record of your smallest habits and most private moments. The handwriting is precise, almost familiar, yet there is something subtly wrong about it, something that sets your nerves alight in a slow, crawling tension. It is as if someone has been here, watching, and the note is both proof and invitation, a reminder that the quiet, that fragile sense of security, has already been violated. Each line of text seems to breathe with an energy of its own, small indentations in the paper catching the lamplight, making the words shimmer and sway, until you feel they are looking back at you, waiting for a response you cannot provide. The rain intensifies, and with it comes the shifting sounds of the house, a floorboard sighs in the hallway, a door settles with a low, resonant groan, and distant from the room, the faintest sound of movement curls along the walls. Not footsteps, not fully formed, but the idea of motion, deliberate and patient, brushing just beyond the edges of your perception. The shadows around you deepen, stretching unnaturally, pooling in corners, climbing the walls with a slow, deliberate attention. You feel drawn to them, yet recoil, caught between curiosity and the quiet dread that has settled over your senses. The note remains on the counter, innocuous and terrifying all at once, a tether to something unseen, a record of observation, and the first tangible proof that you are no longer alone in this house. You attempt to set it aside, but the hand hesitates, trembling just slightly despite the deliberate calm you try to maintain. There is a subtle sound, almost like a sigh, a breath drawn across the surfaces of the house, following you as you move. The shadows respond, stretching toward the note, toward you, curling with a patient awareness. The rain drums a relentless cadence against the glass, but inside, the rhythm of the house is different, measured, patient, alive in a way that transcends architecture. You feel the air shift, thickening slightly, carrying with it the faintest scent of smoke and wet earth, a reminder that the outside storm is mirrored by something more intimate, more deliberate inside. In the flickering light, the note's edges seem to quiver, and you feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing from the dark corners of the kitchen. It is not malevolent in the way of sudden fear, it is patient, assessing, as though it has been waiting years for this single night. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant whisper that curls along the walls, is an accompaniment to the note itself, an orchestra of attention played in minor tones. The house seems to lean toward the words, to amplify their meaning, to ensure that their presence is unmistakable. There is a subtle awareness in the way the shadows pool around the edges of the room, a slow, creeping pressure that brushes your consciousness, making the walls themselves seem alive, attentive, knowing. You try to breathe slowly, to focus on the sound of the rain outside, yet it blends seamlessly with the interior murmurs, the sighing wood, the faint skittering of something behind walls or under floors. The note has become a pivot, a center of tension in the room, pulling attention toward it while the rest of the house stretches outward, whispering and waiting. There is a sensation that the note is not merely paper and ink, but a bridge, a conduit for observation, for presence, for something patient and persistent that has been here longer than you, watching, waiting, and now reaching its first tentative hand into your awareness. The lamplight flickers again, and in that brief darkness between pulses, the edges of the room dissolve into shadows that feel thicker than air, more substantial, pressing close, curling around corners, and settling over surfaces like a slow tide. The note lies there quietly, innocuous yet impossible to ignore, and the rain's rhythm outside becomes a heartbeat, slower now, heavier, echoing through the empty spaces of the house, through walls and floorboards, into the chambers of your own chest. You feel a chill that is not from the weather, not from the cold draft that slips through window cracks, but from the awareness that observation has begun, that something beyond sight is marking you, remembering you, noting your presence with meticulous care. The shadows stretch again, responding to your gaze, and the whispers return, curling softly around the edges of hearing, as though hesitant to speak, careful in their patience. The note seems to hum faintly under your fingertips, and you sense a shift in the air, subtle, deliberate, as if the house itself leans closer, listening for the next move. The rain outside continues its endless cadence, relentless and unyielding, and inside, the house whispers in response, echoing memories of movement and presence, each sound and sigh marking the space with unseen footsteps and unseen attention. Time slips, unmeasured, and the note remains where it is, silent, deliberate, waiting. The room seems to breathe around it, the shadows tightening in corners, curling along edges, pressing against surfaces in a slow, deliberate rhythm that mirrors your own heartbeat. The whispers curl at the edges of hearing once more, and you realize that their presence is patient, constant, intimate. You are being watched, yes, but not with sudden violence. It is observation with intention, a slow, creeping intimacy that presses against the limits of your awareness. And there, on the countertop, the note waits, patient, unwavering, and somehow alive in the still, rain-drenched night. The house is no longer just a space you occupy, it has become a presence that stretches into your every thought, shaping your perception with subtle, unyielding insistence. Outside, the rain has grown relentless, slashing against the windows in sheets that streak the glass with silver lines, turning the night into a shifting canvas of light and shadow. Each drop hits the roof with a resonant ping, vibrating through the walls, traveling along the floorboards beneath your bare feet, and settling in the very air you breathe, dense and damp with the weight of untold history. The house sighs and creaks in response, groaning softly under its own age, its walls shifting imperceptibly, as though it stretches its memory to include you in its long, patient recollection. There is a subtle awareness here, a deliberate attentiveness that makes even the smallest sound, your own breath, the shuffle of your movement, the faint scrape of furniture against the floor, feel like it is being catalogued, measured, remembered. As you move from room to room, the subtle distortions begin. Photographs on the walls, the ones you thought hung straight, seem slightly askew, as if the angle has been shifted in your absence. A picture of a tree outside the front window appears to stretch its branches differently, leaning inward instead of out, and for a moment you catch the sense of motion in something that should be fixed, permanent. The floorboards creak under your weight, responding not just to pressure but to presence, the sound echoing down the hallways like a murmur from the house itself. You sense that it has been watching long before your arrival, that every small, precise shift is an acknowledgement, a trace of its attention, a reflection of its memory being rewritten to include your footsteps, your existence. A fleeting figure moves in the corner of your eye, not solid, not defined, but something that shifts in the periphery, lingering just beyond the reach of light. You turn, and there is nothing, only shadows deepening in corners, stretching with a fluidity that should not be possible. The piano in the living room, untouched since the day you arrived, emits the faintest hum as if remembering melodies that have long since vanished. The air carries the faint scent of smoke, dry and old, layered with the dampness of rain and the faint tang of something metallic that you cannot name. It is everywhere and nowhere, brushing along your skin in a way that feels deliberate, conscious, patient. The house does not move with malice, it moves with awareness, with memory, with a slow, deliberate intelligence that bends time and space around its own recollections. You notice a small drawer in the hallway, one you had not opened before, its handle polished smooth from use. Sliding it open reveals objects that are familiar yet wrong, like memories distorted by distance, a pen that should belong to someone else, a key without a lock, a folded scrap of paper with half-formed sentences, a photograph with faces you swear you recognize from another life, another time. The air thickens around it, carrying the hushed murmur of voices that do not form words, only tones, sighs, echoes of something once said and never spoken aloud again. The shadows twist, responding to the drawer's opening, spreading and pooling along the floorboards as though liquid, and for a heartbeat you feel the weight of eyes, countless and invisible, tracing your movements. You are not alone. You have never been alone here. The house has always known, always remembered, and now it is teaching you that its memory is longer than yours, and far more patient. As the night deepens, so does the distortion. The walls seem to stretch slightly, the hallways narrowing and widening imperceptibly, shifting in subtle increments that your mind strains to rationalize. A door you left closed appears ajar when you glance back, though you remember locking it. The hinges groan in a low, resonant echo, as if exhaling after a long pause. Every creak of the floorboards becomes a pulse, an invisible rhythm that aligns with the whispering wind outside, the staccato drum of rain against the roof, and the faint tremor of the house's own breathing. The photographs, the furniture, even the walls themselves are not simply objects, they are conduits of memory, repositories of grief, of small, careful observations that the house has kept for years and now reveals in its own deliberate timing. The past of the home leaks into the present in shapes, in shadows, in the faint, curling whispers that brush against the edges of your mind. The whispers are faint, at first almost imperceptible, threading through the room like smoke. They do not form words, but they carry meaning, tones that twist your chest with a subtle, inescapable dread. They rise and fall with the rhythm of the rain, aligning with the creaks of the floorboards, with the sighing of the walls, until every sound seems part of a single, slow organism. You feel grief that is not entirely yours, sorrow that belongs to the house, seeping into your awareness, curling in your chest and hollowing out your calm. The air carries temperature shifts that are impossible, fleeting chills that touch only one shoulder at a time, or a warmth that presses against the nape of your neck and vanishes before you can locate its source. You move carefully, every step measured, conscious that each creak, each sigh, each whisper is acknowledged, noted, and stored, and that you are being rewritten into the house's memory as surely as the house is being written into yours. Objects shift subtly in response to your gaze. A vase leans slightly, a chair tilts, a blanket slides an inch along the floor, small, almost imperceptible gestures that seem to confirm that the house reacts not to force, but to attention. And then the photographs, faces shift just barely when you are not looking, the expression of a person once joyful now tinged with a ghost of sadness, the angles of eyes seeming to follow you through the room. It is a slow, deliberate performance, subtle enough that you question your perception, but persistent enough to leave no doubt. You feel watched, yes, but not by a creature in the traditional sense, by the house itself, alive with memory, attentive to presence, shaping reality to reflect its own recollections, its own griefs, its own obsessions. The piano hums again, this time a faint vibration that resonates through the floorboards, echoing in your chest. It is as though the house has remembered a song, a moment, a fragment of sound, and offers it in acknowledgement of your presence. The shadows respond, swirling at the edges of your vision, pooling thickly in corners, lingering behind doors, stretching upward along the walls. You sense movement without seeing it, a slight shift in a curtain, the floorboards settling unevenly, the faint sound of air pressed through narrow gaps, all converging into a rhythm that belongs solely to this place. Every breath you take, every shift of weight, every hesitant glance becomes part of the orchestration. The night stretches. Rain continues its relentless descent, hammering against the roof and windows with a cadence that feels like both clock and heartbeat. The house, patient and enduring, molds itself around you, the shadows deepening, the whispers curling tighter, and the memories of what has occurred here pressing outward, brushing against your consciousness. You feel grief again, not just your own, but the residue of the house's long, patient history, the sorrow of past inhabitants, of moments unseen, of tragedies unspoken yet never forgotten. It coils around your ribs, settling like cold smoke, and you feel the weight of time here, heavy and deliberate, pressing down, bending your perception of night and house, of memory and presence. Even as you attempt to focus on the ordinary, the hum of the lamp, the slow drip of rain, the rough texture of the floorboards beneath your feet, there is the creeping, inevitable realization that the house remembers more than you do. It reacts to you, subtly, deliberately, the shifting of objects, the bending of shadows, the faint whispers threading through the still air, all of it catalogued and represented in the quietest of ways. A picture tilts again, a shadow pools more deeply, a faint chill brushes your shoulder, and you understand that the house's memory, its observation, is both patient and enduring, a slow presence that folds itself around your senses, bending your awareness into something shared, intimate, and inescapable. Time becomes uncertain. The rain, the whispers, the sighing of wood and shadow merge into a single, continuous awareness, and you feel that the house has no beginning and no end, only memory and presence and observation. The piano hums faintly again, the photographs shift just slightly, and the air carries a weight of attention that cannot be ignored. You are not alone, and perhaps you never were. The house remembers, it watches, it bends the present around itself, and slowly, inevitably, you begin to understand that your perception, your memory, and your grief are now entwined with its own, in ways both intimate and unsettling, in ways that will linger long after the rain has stopped and the night has passed. The whispers begin slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, drifting along the edges of hearing like smoke curling through a cracked window. Outside, the rain falls in unrelenting sheets, hammering against the roof with a rhythm that echoes through the walls, reverberating in the floorboards and settling deep in the hollow spaces of the house. Each drop vibrates in the air, a persistent reminder of the storm beyond the glass, yet the real storm is inside, subtle and patient, unfolding in the shifting shadows and the faint creak of wood that has borne the weight of countless footsteps over decades. You sit in the dim glow of a single lamp, aware of the silence as much as the noise, and realize that every sound, every sigh of the house, is amplified in the emptiness, each creak a message you are only beginning to understand. The first whisper is like a memory brushing against your ear, intangible, curling around your thoughts, and then another follows, layered, persistent, a language almost understood but never fully comprehended. They are fragments of something, names, sighs, half-formed phrases, interwoven with the rhythm of the rain, aligning in the spaces between heartbeat and thought. The floorboards creak again, a soft, deliberate sound, and you sense motion in the distance, not solid, not defined, just enough to awaken the awareness that the house is never still, that it is alive in ways both seen and unseen. Shadows pulse at the edges of your vision, thickening in corners, stretching along walls, responding to the whispers as if conducting their own patient symphony. You move carefully through the hallway, each step measured, conscious of the air, which carries subtle shifts in temperature, small gusts that brush against your skin like breath from an unseen presence. The hallway seems to elongate as you walk, narrowing and widening imperceptibly, drawing your attention to details you might have overlooked before. A picture frame tilts slightly, the glass reflecting the flicker of the lamp in strange, distorted ways, and you feel a presence beyond the ordinary perception of sight. The whispers swell subtly, threading through the room like fine threads of sound, brushing against the walls and ceiling, curling around corners, lingering just long enough to be noticed but never fully revealed. In the living room, the furniture seems to shift ever so slightly when you glance away, the sofa tilting, a chair moving an inch, as if the house itself is adjusting its contents in response to your awareness. The whispers rise and fall with the sway of shadows, and the piano in the corner hums faintly, resonating with the energy in the air. You approach it, fingers hovering above the keys, but do not touch. The sound is already there, humming from within the wood itself, the faint memory of music long forgotten. The shadows respond, pooling more deeply along the edges of the room, curling upward along the walls, and you feel that the house is observing not only your presence but your hesitation, cataloging every pause, every breath, every flicker of curiosity or fear. The rain intensifies, hammering the roof with a pulse that resonates through the wooden beams, shaking loose small dust particles that fall lazily through the dim light. Each creak of the floorboards, each sigh of the walls, aligns with the whispers, creating a rhythm that is both mesmerizing and suffocating. The air carries a faint scent of damp earth mixed with smoke, old and lingering, curling around your awareness, a reminder that the house is older than you, patient beyond reckoning, a keeper of memory and grief. You notice small shifts in the environment, a doorknob tilts, a curtain flickers, a shadow stretches further than it should, all subtle gestures that heighten your awareness, pressing you to recognize the house not as a structure but as a presence, a living observer entwined with the storm and the whispers. In the kitchen, the note from earlier lies undisturbed, but now its presence feels more insistent, charged with the energy of the unseen watchers. The whispers curl toward it, layering over one another, and you feel a pull, a compulsion to approach, to acknowledge the unseen audience that has waited patiently for you. Each step you take causes the floorboards to respond, creaking in faint echoes that seem synchronized with the murmurs. The shadows deepen again, gathering at the corners and edges of the room, stretching toward the note as if drawing it into their presence, emphasizing its significance in ways that go beyond the physical. The temperature shifts suddenly, a cold pulse that brushes against the back of your neck, leaving goosebumps in its wake. The whispers twist, circling, hesitant but persistent, a chorus of observation that presses gently against your thoughts. You feel a mixture of grief and anticipation, a slow, creeping awareness that the house remembers more than you do, that it catalogues sorrow as carefully as it observes movement. The floorboards creak underfoot, each sound echoing down the hallways in a way that amplifies the tension in the air, reminding you that the house is patient, waiting, attentive. Shadows shift in response, stretching across walls and ceilings, pooling where they ought not, a dance in silent rhythm with the whispers that curl in the air like smoke. The rain hammers harder, a relentless percussion against glass and roof, and the house responds with its own subtle movements. The floorboards settle, the doors groan, the furniture tilts imperceptibly, and you sense an energy in the air, patient and deliberate, that watches you as much as you watch it. The whispers grow slightly more insistent, brushing against the edges of hearing, curling in tones that are almost, but not quite, comprehensible. They speak of presence, of observation, of small, intimate details noticed long before your arrival. You feel a tightening in your chest, a coil of grief and apprehension, the weight of memory pressing into your awareness, folding past and present together into a single, continuous pulse. You follow the hallway again, your steps measured, as the whispers trace along the walls, curling into corners and recesses, brushing against your mind like the faintest caress. Shadows stretch unnaturally, thickening where the light fades, pooling in corners, coiling around furniture, extending across walls as though the house itself were alive with memory, aware of your every movement. The air carries subtle scents of damp wood, faint smoke, and something metallic, fleeting and impossible to locate. Each step causes the floorboards to sigh, aligning with the whispers, creating a rhythm that is both hypnotic and unsettling, drawing your awareness deeper into the house, into its memory, into its patience. In the bedroom, the lamp flickers, casting light that shifts the shadows into strange, elongated shapes. The whispers gather here, lingering longer, curling around the bedposts, brushing against the nape of your neck, pressing close to your thoughts. The rain's rhythm becomes a heartbeat, echoing through the house and into your own chest, and you feel the weight of attention pressing in from every corner, every surface, every shadow. The presence in the house is patient, deliberate, subtle, but undeniable. It observes, catalogues, remembers, and with every sigh of the floorboards, every flicker of the lamp, every curl of shadow, it asserts itself, folding your awareness into its own slow, relentless consciousness. Hours pass unmeasured. The rain hammers against the windows, the floorboards groan and sigh, the shadows pulse and stretch, and the whispers weave their way through the air, persistent, patient, intimate. You feel the house around you as more than structure, more than wood and plaster. It is memory and presence, grief and attention, a slow, creeping intelligence that observes without malice but without leniency, cataloging every movement, every breath, every hesitation. The whispers curl once more, brushing against your awareness in tones of observation and recognition, and you realize with a subtle, creeping dread that the house will not let you forget, will not let you remain unaware. It will watch, always, patiently, and the whispers are only the beginning of its awareness, tracing your presence in a slow, deliberate rhythm that aligns with the storm, the shadows, and the sighing of the old, patient walls. The night has deepened, thick and suffocating, with rain hammering relentlessly against the roof and windows, each drop a sharp percussion that vibrates through the house, through the floorboards, through the very air, settling into your chest like a weight you cannot shake. The darkness is not simply absence of light, but a presence that twists around the corners, pooling in shadows that seem to breathe, curling along the walls and furniture in ways that defy logic. Floorboards creak beneath your feet, low and deliberate, groaning with age and memory, echoing down empty hallways like whispered warnings, and with every step, the house seems to adjust, bending itself subtly to your awareness, reminding you that you are observed, measured, catalogued in every movement, every breath, every pause. There is a sense now that the house itself is alive in a way that is almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The shadows shift at the edge of vision, thickening where the light cannot reach, curling closer to the corners of the walls, coiling along baseboards and stairwells, lingering near the floor in slow, deliberate folds. The whispers drift faintly through the air, brushing against perception without forming words, threading around furniture, sliding across ceilings, trailing along the edges of your thoughts, pressing in gently but persistently. They carry a weight of memory, of attention, of observation that predates your presence. You feel it in your chest, a slow tightening, a coil of unease and fascination that you cannot disentangle from the pulse of the rain, the sigh of the walls, the groan of floorboards beneath your feet. A door shifts ahead, moving just enough to catch the lamplight, tilting inward with a soft, deliberate groan. It is not violent, not sudden, but it carries intention, a subtle acknowledgement of your passage. The hallway stretches beyond it, narrowing and widening imperceptibly, bending in ways your mind struggles to track, and the shadows respond with patience, curling toward the doorway, thickening against the walls, pooling near the baseboards like liquid. You sense motion in the periphery, a weight that is aware of your gaze even as it remains unseen, a presence coiling through the air with the same slow, deliberate patience as the storm outside. The living room offers further evidence of subtle intrusion. The sofa cushions have shifted slightly, a tilt just noticeable enough to draw attention. A chair leans against the wall at an unnatural angle, and the shadows behind it stretch impossibly along the floorboards, thickening near the legs of furniture, climbing the walls in undulating waves. The piano hums faintly, a vibration that travels up through the floorboards into your chest, though no one has touched it. It is a memory in sound, a recognition of presence, a subtle pulse of awareness that the house itself seems to possess. Whispers curl along the walls, threading between furniture, brushing against the edges of perception in tones that are felt more than heard, wrapping tightly around your consciousness, coaxing attention while never revealing shape or form. You notice the subtle changes first in the hallway, a small drawer left slightly ajar, a doorknob that tilts when you thought it had been left still, a photograph hanging at a crooked angle, the expression on the face in the image altered, eyes tracing you with uncanny awareness. The floorboards respond in harmony with these observations, creaking underfoot in rhythm with your steps, resonating along the beams, down into the hollow spaces, amplifying the subtle pressures in the air. There is an intimacy here, not threatening, but unavoidable. You are catalogued in every gesture, every hesitation, every small flicker of curiosity or fear, and the house remembers, layers observation upon memory, entwining your presence with its own patient consciousness. The rain outside intensifies, slashing against the glass in sheets that obscure the world beyond, turning the windows into shifting mirrors reflecting shadows and light. The air carries the scent of wet wood, old plaster, faint smoke, and a metallic tang that cannot be placed, curling through the senses, brushing against skin in soft, fleeting touches. Shadows deepen in the corners, pooling and stretching in concert with the whispers that wind through the house like smoke through cracks in the walls. Each step you take, each glance you cast, each breath you release is woven into this careful, deliberate rhythm. The house breathes with you, listens with you, watches through you. In the bedroom, the atmosphere thickens further. Lamplight flickers softly against walls and furniture, stretching shadows into elongated shapes that coil and pulse along the baseboards. The whispers are persistent here, curling along the nape of your neck, the small of your back, threading around the bedposts, around the edges of furniture, lingering near the floor. The air is cool, heavy, pressing gently against skin and lungs, carrying the subtle scent of damp wood and smoke. Every movement is measured against these presences, floorboards creaking beneath your weight, echoing through hallways in low, patient pulses that align with the rhythm of the storm. The presence grows more insistent yet remains patient, deliberate, subtle. Objects shift quietly in the periphery, a book lying open where it should have been on a shelf, a chair leaning slightly, a curtain swaying though no draft moves through the room. Each is a signal, a reminder that observation here is layered, continuous, patient. Shadows respond to your gaze, curling, pooling, stretching, shaping themselves around furniture, walls, corners, door frames. The whispers braid together in patterns that feel almost musical, soft coils of sound that press against the mind without forming words, brushing against perception in the edges of awareness, reminding you of presence without revealing origin. You move through the house again, floorboards sighing beneath each careful step, shadows curling at the edges of vision, deepening in corners, tracing along walls in slow, deliberate arcs. The whispers curl with you, brushing against ears, brushing against thought, lingering near the floor, threading over furniture, aligning with the movement of shadows in a pattern that is patient, precise, and intimate. You feel your own heartbeat synchronizing, unwillingly, with the rhythm of the house, the storm, and the whispers. You notice the faint tilt of a picture frame, the subtle displacement of a chair, the delicate sway of a curtain, all orchestrated with a patient awareness that is both alien and intimate, as though the house watches not merely through sight, but through memory, through attention, through presence itself. The living room calls again, and you find that the subtle intrusions have compounded. Shadows twist along walls and ceiling, thickening near corners, curling along the edges of furniture, pooling at the baseboards. The whispers spiral closer, brushing against your awareness, threading along the floors, curling in the air above, pressing softly against thought. The piano hums faintly again, vibrating through floorboards and into chest, an acknowledgement, a pulse, a reminder that presence here is noted and mirrored. Every sound, the creak of floorboards, the sigh of hinges, the groan of beams, is catalogued, echoed, returned with subtle insistence, folding your perception into the house's long, patient memory. The hallway beyond stretches unnaturally, the walls bending just slightly, the air thick with expectation. Shadows stretch toward the ceiling, pooling at corners, curling along furniture in subtle undulations that resemble slow breathing. The whispers wind along the walls, through narrow gaps, brushing against your mind in tones that feel more felt than heard, pressing against perception with a quiet insistence. The house itself seems to breathe with the storm, sigh with the shadows, hum with the whispers, and you sense with increasing awareness that its attention is deliberate, patient, and unyielding, cataloging each motion, each glance, each small tremor of fear or curiosity. Time is fluid. The rain hammers outside, the floorboards groan beneath weight and attention, the shadows twist and stretch in patient patterns, and the whispers coil, threading through corners, along walls, near the ceiling, through the hollow spaces of the house, pressing softly against perception. You are entwined in it now, presence and memory folding together in slow, deliberate rhythm. Shadows deepen, the whispers brush closer, floorboards respond with low groans, and every subtle shift, every flicker of lamplight, every breath you take is mirrored, catalogued, woven into the patient awareness that resides in this house. The tension stretches without release, thick and inescapable, and the night moves onward, deliberate, intimate, unresolved. The rain has become relentless, a constant drum against the windows and roof, each drop vibrating through the beams and floorboards, a persistent rhythm that seems to echo inside your chest, inside your mind, as though the storm itself is aware of every step you take. The house has settled into a slow, deliberate rhythm with the storm, sighing and groaning through old beams, floorboards creaking beneath your weight, walls exhaling in low, mournful tones. The air is thick with damp wood, faint smoke, and something metallic, fleeting and impossible to name, curling against the skin and pressing lightly against your senses. Shadows in the corners stretch and twist, pooling near walls and furniture, moving with a slow, deliberate awareness that is impossible to ignore. You move cautiously, aware that every step is noted, every pause is measured, every breath is catalogued in the quiet consciousness that lingers in the hollow spaces of the house. In the hallway, a door creaks slightly as though pushed by a hand invisible, or perhaps by the gentle insistence of air curling through the frame. The floorboards groan beneath each careful step, amplifying the sense of presence, echoing down empty corridors in slow waves, each vibration a reminder that the house is aware, attentive, deliberate. The shadows respond to your gaze, curling closer, pooling at the baseboards, stretching upward along the walls in shapes that mimic breathing, coiling in corners and along furniture with subtle, patient intention. The whispers are low, curling around the edges of perception, brushing against thought without forming words, pressing softly but insistently into awareness, threading along walls and ceiling, along the floor, along the edges of furniture, binding your senses to the rhythm of the storm and the house itself. The living room is suffused with quiet, deliberate disturbances. A chair tilts slightly against the wall, cushions subtly displaced, a book left open where it should have been on a shelf. The piano hums faintly, vibrating through the floorboards and into your chest, though no one has touched it. The shadows curl in response, thickening near the corners, stretching along walls, pooling under furniture, moving in slow arcs that seem synchronized with the faint, persistent whispers. Each subtle alteration seems to acknowledge your presence, a quiet, patient communication that this house is observing, measuring, cataloging, waiting. The rhythm of creaking wood, sighing beams, distant whispers, and the relentless percussion of rain threads together into a deliberate, unbroken pattern of awareness that tugs at the edges of perception. You step into the hallway again, where shadows pool and stretch along walls, climbing furniture, curling along baseboards, thickening at corners in slow, deliberate waves. The air is heavier here, carrying the dampness of rain, the faint tang of smoke, the subtle metallic note that lingers just beneath perception. Floorboards groan beneath your careful steps, resonating faintly through hollow spaces, echoing in low, deliberate pulses that align with the whispers brushing along walls, curling through air, threading along ceilings. The house watches, quietly, patiently, pressing against awareness in subtle, unrelenting waves, cataloging every movement, every glance, every tremor of attention. There is no need for sudden terror here, the suspense is woven in the rhythm itself, in the persistent awareness that observes every action with careful, deliberate patience. The staircase creaks beneath your steps, each groan echoing up and down the hallways, blending with the persistent sound of rain and the sighing of old wood. Shadows climb along the walls and banister, curling over the edges of steps, pooling in corners and beneath furniture, coiling and uncoiling in subtle, deliberate rhythms that are mirrored by the whispers threading through the space. The house responds to your presence as if it has always known you were coming, as if it has been cataloging your attention and curiosity even before your first footfall. Every detail, the tilt of a picture frame, the sway of a curtain, the hum of the piano, the subtle shift of a chair, is a measured signal of observation, patient, deliberate, intimate. In the upper hallway, shadows stretch and twist in ways that defy logic, thickening at corners, pooling along the baseboards, coiling over furniture and door frames. The air is dense, heavy with expectation, carrying the damp, smoky scent that permeates the house. Whispers curl around the edges of perception, threading through the ceiling, brushing along the walls, pressing against thought without forming language, soft but insistent. Floorboards creak in harmony with your steps, echoing in low, deliberate pulses that reinforce the rhythm of observation and attention that permeates the house. There is an intimacy here, deliberate and unyielding, a presence that presses gently but persistently, patient and aware, weaving your attention into its own memory, folding every movement, every glance, every breath into the fabric of the house. You enter a bedroom, where the atmosphere is thickest. Shadows coil in corners, curling along walls and furniture, thickening near the baseboards, stretching along ceilings in slow, deliberate patterns. Lamplight flickers softly, distorting shapes in ways that are subtly unnatural, making the shadows seem almost liquid as they pool and stretch in response to awareness. The whispers are near now, brushing along the nape of your neck, threading around bedposts, curling near furniture, coiling in the air in patterns that are felt rather than heard. Floorboards groan softly beneath your weight, amplifying presence, resonating through hollow spaces, and blending seamlessly with the persistent rhythm of rain outside. Objects in the room reveal subtle intrusion, a book lying open on the floor, a chair leaning at an angle that seems deliberate, a curtain swaying despite the still air. Each detail is measured, patient, a deliberate acknowledgement that you are being observed. Shadows stretch toward your gaze, responding, moving with intention, curling around corners and edges in ways that are slow and deliberate, aligning with the whispers that thread along ceilings, walls, floors, pressing softly against consciousness. The rain hammers on the windows, the floorboards creak beneath your steps, the beams sigh, and the shadows twist in concert with the whispering presence, binding your perception into the patient, deliberate rhythm that permeates the house. You move again through the hallway, floorboards groaning in response to each careful step, shadows curling and thickening, pooling at corners, stretching along walls, climbing along furniture in arcs that seem almost alive. Whispers brush against awareness in tones that are soft, insistent, unbroken, threading along ceilings, through narrow gaps, brushing along floorboards, wrapping around furniture. The house itself seems aware, alive, patient and deliberate, folding observation and memory together into a rhythm that is unyielding, continuous, intimate. Every flicker of lamplight, every groan of a floorboard, every subtle shift of furniture and shadow becomes a part of this unbroken pattern of awareness, of attention, of presence. Time stretches and bends within the house. The storm outside continues its relentless percussion, the floorboards creak and groan in measured rhythms, the shadows twist, curl, and pool in deliberate arcs, the whispers thread around perception, brushing against consciousness, pressing gently but insistently, and every movement, glance, breath, and pause is folded into the patient, deliberate awareness that inhabits every corner. The bedroom door creaks, the hallway stretches, the shadows deepen, the whispers press closer, and every subtle, deliberate intrusion, tilted chair, swaying curtain, open book, humming piano, reminds you that you are observed, that you are catalogued, that presence here is continuous, patient, and unrelenting. The night continues in quiet, deliberate tension, unresolved, unyielding, and entirely alive. The rain has fallen without pause for hours now, a relentless curtain of sound that hammers against the windows, the roof, the gutters, each drop a tiny percussion that vibrates through the floorboards and into the very air you breathe. It threads through the house, saturating it with rhythm, with memory, with a sense of slow, unbroken awareness. The floorboards groan beneath your careful steps, soft, deliberate moans that echo down empty hallways, mingling with the sighing of beams, the subtle settling of walls, the quiet creak of hinges. Every sound seems amplified in the stillness between drops, each echo carrying the weight of observation, patient, unyielding, and intimate. Shadows gather in the corners, twisting along walls, pooling beneath furniture, curling in undulating arcs that seem to breathe, to move with purpose, following the pulse of the house and the storm alike. You move through the hallway, aware of the subtle shifts around you, the tilting of picture frames, the slight lean of chairs, the delicate sway of curtains, each detail deliberate, patient, and calculated. The whispers are low now, coiling in the air like smoke, brushing along walls, threading through ceiling cracks, curling around furniture, pressing against perception without forming language. They are present in every shadow, every creak, every sigh of wood, folding attention and memory into one continuous rhythm. The house seems alive in ways you can feel but not see, its awareness a slow, deliberate presence that tracks every step, every pause, every breath, every glance, pressing softly against the chest, curling around the spine, pressing insistently against the edges of thought. The living room presents new signs of subtle intrusion. The sofa cushions have shifted, a chair leans ever so slightly from its usual position, the piano hums faintly, vibrating through the floorboards into your chest though no one has touched it. Shadows in the corners thicken, pooling along walls, curling around legs of furniture, climbing in slow waves along baseboards. The whispers swirl around, brushing against perception, threading through space like invisible threads, pressing softly against your awareness, a presence that is patient, deliberate, and unbroken. The rhythm of the storm, of the house, of the floorboards and the whispers aligns into a subtle cadence, slow, intimate, and impossible to escape. The staircase beckons with quiet insistence, creaking beneath each step in low, deliberate groans, echoing down the hallways and amplifying the sense of watchful presence. Shadows climb the walls alongside the banister, curling around each step, pooling at corners, thickening where the lamplight fails to reach. The whispers trail behind, brushing softly against the nape of the neck, around the small of the back, threading along furniture, coiling through the ceiling, pressing into the edges of thought. The house breathes with the storm, sighs with each creak of the floorboards, hums with the whispering presence that follows every movement, every pause, every deliberate glance. You are catalogued, observed, measured in ways both subtle and unrelenting, as though the house itself carries memory folded into attention, grief folded into awareness, patience folded into observation. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretches into darkness, elongated and uncertain. Shadows curl along the walls, thickening in corners, pooling near baseboards, climbing over furniture in slow arcs that seem conscious of your gaze. The whispers grow closer here, brushing along walls, threading along floors, curling through ceilings, pressing softly but persistently against perception. The air carries the damp scent of rain, the faint tang of metallic memory, the smoke of long-extinguished fires, all curling into a weight that presses against chest and lungs. The floorboards groan beneath each step, echoing through hollow spaces, amplifying the rhythm of observation that the house maintains. Presence here is unbroken, continuous, patient, intimate, and entirely alive. A bedroom opens ahead, the atmosphere thick with tension, heavy with expectation. Shadows curl in corners, pool along baseboards, stretch along walls, and climb along furniture in slow, deliberate patterns. Lamplight flickers softly, distorting shapes, elongating forms, making shadows ripple like liquid across walls and ceiling. The whispers press more insistently here, brushing along nape and shoulders, threading around bedposts, curling near furniture, coiling through the air in patterns felt rather than heard. Every subtle shift, the tilt of a chair, the sway of a curtain, the soft hum of the piano, becomes a signal, a deliberate acknowledgement of your presence, a reminder that observation is constant, patient, and deliberate. Objects seem to move slightly in your periphery, a book left open on the floor, a chair leaning just a fraction differently, a picture frame tilted slightly as if it had followed your gaze. The shadows respond in synchrony, curling closer, thickening, stretching along walls, pooling in corners, climbing along edges of furniture. The whispers thread through it all, wrapping along ceiling, walls, and floors, pressing softly against thought, threading presence and memory together into a slow, deliberate rhythm. Rain hammers on the windows, floorboards groan beneath each step, beams sigh softly in alignment, and the shadows shift patiently, a choreography of presence that is quiet, deliberate, and intimate. You move through the hallway again, floorboards creaking in slow, measured pulses beneath your weight, shadows pooling at corners, curling along walls and furniture, climbing and twisting in subtle arcs. The whispers press softly against perception, threading along ceilings, brushing along walls, curling near furniture, weaving attention into memory, insistently pressing against awareness. The house seems alive, its attention patient, deliberate, relentless in its quiet insistence, folding your presence into its own long, patient memory. Every subtle detail, the tilt of a picture, the hum of a piano, the sway of a curtain, the soft creak of a floorboard, serves as reminder, signal, acknowledgement of observation. The bedroom door creaks, shadows deepen, curling at corners, thickening at baseboards, stretching along walls and furniture. Whispers thread through the room, brushing softly against perception, pressing in gentle insistence, unbroken, continuous, patient. The rain hammers outside, a relentless percussion that echoes inside, aligning with floorboard groans, sighing beams, curling shadows, and whispering presence. Every step, every glance, every breath, every small shift in attention is folded into the deliberate, patient rhythm that the house maintains, intertwining memory, awareness, and observation into a seamless, unyielding pattern. Time stretches and bends. Rain hammers, shadows twist and stretch, floorboards groan, whispers coil, threading through the house, pressing softly but insistently against perception. Every flicker of lamplight, every subtle shift of furniture, every hum of the piano, every tilt of a picture frame, every creak of wood, every curling shadow, every brushing whisper becomes part of the patient, deliberate consciousness that inhabits the house. The presence is unbroken, continuous, intimate, inescapable. The night moves onward, deliberate and patient, tension unyielding, unresolved, waiting, watching, aware.